Hi everyone, RFG here with a review for Outrider Mako, a top-down action-adventure game with a good deal of platforming developed by Asamado Games and published by Playism, available on Steam. Taking place in the Mayoi world, the charming pixel graphics and the loop of delivering packages to gods may lull you into a false sense of security with a seemingly simple delivery quest assigned to you, but there is plenty out there in this world that makes this a tad more complicated. After falling into a red nectar well in the Bumon Delivery Center in the Mayoi world, the main character Mako is greeted by Kouma, who's somewhat of a guide and directs you to Mozu, who along with Bumon run the center. As Mozu explains what red nectar is and that Mako is trapped in this world, he'll hand you a notebook that proves as a contract to be a courier for the center. Filling this notebook with the seal stamps of the gods that Mozu provides after each successful delivery you make to them can help guide Mako back home. You can view the contents of the notebook at any time, as it contains more than just the seal stamps you can gain, like Mako's own delivery memos and conversation memos from characters that mostly serve as reminders for game details. The Bumon Delivery Center serves as your starting/dispatch point, but it also functions as a general hub, and though your initial briefing from Mozu doesn't allow for much to do except to head to the training room and then to the outside realm to begin your delivery, you'll eventually be able to use a workbench, an ATM, and be able to shop from merchants, all of which I'll get into more detail later. After visiting the training room, the gameplay loop is actually pretty simple. Mozu will provide you with a job to do, you'll head out to a realm, complete the delivery, and then you'll be able to head back to the center to get a seal stamp from Mozu. Receiving a seal stamp puts you on break, where you can roam around the center to prepare for your next delivery, and then whenever you're ready, you can speak to Mozu again to start a new job to continue filling your notebook. Talking to Mozu is usually the beginning and end point of each delivery, and even though the game does progress in a linear fashion, the realms you enter can be fairly open to traverse through. Deliveries aren't as simple as getting from point A to point B either. Each realm you visit is inhabited by mononoke, the common enemies found in the Mayoi world. And many of the deliveries you'll be tasked to make require crystals you have to mine from the fields of each realm you visit. These crystals spawn randomly throughout the realms that Mozu will send you to, so collecting them generally requires you to balance your time between mining necessary crystals and fending off enemies. Mining leaves you vulnerable to attacks from the mononoke, and different crystals can take more time to mine than others, so it isn't safe to focus on mining while enemies are around. Taking out enemies may appear to be basic at first, as the magic rod given to you by Mozu after first contracting you is the only offensive tool he gives, but it has a decently ranged arcane attack to combat with. Holding down the attack button lets you unleash a strong attack that deals more damage and can destroy certain barriers blocking your path, where the debris from them can deal damage to enemies. Jumping and pressing the attack button towards an enemy allows you to perform an arrow attack. Arrow attacks don't deal much damage, but can be used for positioning, especially if there are multiple mononoke around. Jumping on its own has invincibility, so you can use this to dodge certain attacks from the enemies you can encounter, but arrow attacks do not retain the invincibility from jumping. Keep in mind that jumping isn't used for climbing. Even if you do see ledges or cliffs that may look like you can reach them by jumping to a higher or lower level, there's usually a staircase or some other way to get there. But there is a good amount of platforming that does require jumping, on top of its uses when around mononoke. Mononoke have their health bar shown above them, while Mako's health is shown at the top left of the screen. Losing all of her health puts you back to your last save point, and any progress you've gained is lost up to your last save. You can save at any of the Dosojin statues that are scattered throughout the various realms you'll visit, and the one at the center. There are no autosaves, so if you're worried about any progress being lost, you should save often, as saving also heals Mako. Underneath Mako's health is the red nectar meter. Red nectar has multiple uses in the game, including combat, and is often coupled with Mako's other main ability, Pouncing. Most objects in the game can be pounced and perched on by pressing the jump button, and then pressing it again within the distance of a perchable object. To dismount from an object, just press the jump button without aiming in any direction. If any perchable objects are close enough, you can repeatedly kick and pounce from one object to another, and in many cases, this can be used as one of your most efficient forms of movement. Keep in mind that pouncing doesn't have invincibility like jumping does, but it does get plenty of use throughout the game as a platforming mechanic. There are many sections that revolve around moving from object to get past certain pits or other obstacles, and will often be used to activate stakes that you'll come across in a realm. Some stakes are meant to be pounced on to progress past certain barriers or to open new paths, while others can be used to assist you in defeating mononoke. Some stakes may take some time to recharge before they can be activated again. Pouncing can also be used on enemies and to kick and pounce to and from them to avoid their attacks. You can combine this with other perchable objects and arrow attacks to continuously reposition yourself and or damage enemies to open them up for stronger attacks. Similar to arrow attacks, it doesn't provide you with invincibility, so depending on the enemy or enemy groups you come across, you may need to be careful on where to pounce. The other main purpose of Pouncing is to cover red nectar on enemies after perching on them to increase Mako's damage output. Magic rod attacks do a decent job of dealing damage and keeping enemies at a distance, but many mononoke won't be discarded easily without the use of red nectar. You're unable to use red nectar without first pouncing on an enemy, but after an enemy has been covered with nectar, you can splash it around by hitting a mononoke that's already covered in it. Covering an enemy with nectar and then attacking them while you're perched on them lets you perform a smite that also splashes nectar to other mononoke. Besides weakening enemies, red nectar can slow them down and soften up hard objects, so using red nectar on crystals in a realm can make them quicker to mine or can make enemies easier to defeat. There are other uses for red nectar, but more importantly, you can gain red nectar mostly by smashing certain objects out in the realm and by defeating enemies. Red nectar's use can become hampered whenever it's raining, so it's always important to keep an eye on your meter to make sure it's not wasted. Another factor that can help you in battle are POW Blasts. After collecting 5 POW lights, blue orbs that spawn randomly on objects in the field and acquired by pouncing on them, you'll be able to fire range attacks from Mako's rod. These ranged attacks don't do full damage, but can keep you relatively safe while attacking. You can only hold a maximum of 5 POW lights, which you can see in the top left corner in your weapon's portrait. Each time you receive damage, you'll lose 1 light and won't be able to use POW Blasts again until you get back up to 5. Combat and mining are integral parts to Outrider Mako's quest, but so are the deliveries. While you do get a screen size notification when all sacred materials for a delivery are collected, your current objectives are always shown at the bottom left of the screen. Most of the time this will just be a reminder of the number of crystals acquired and how many are needed for a delivery, but it'll adjust whenever an objective is met. Acquiring the necessary number of sacred materials is your most common objective, but delivering them right after collection isn't exactly professional, so packing materials in Bumon Delivery spirit energy infused paper prior to delivery is a must. You can package materials at any of the workbenches you find in a realm. After you're done at a workbench, you can complete your delivery to the god that requested the materials. Delivering a package rewards you with a choice of 1 of 3 divine blessings that you can equip at any workbench. These blessings can only be equipped at a workbench and they don't automatically equip when acquired, but since this is usually the last part of a delivery, you can generally head back to the office to speak with Mozu to collect the seal step and then take your break. Break times are mostly used for prepping for your next delivery. There's no particular order you need to follow in terms of what you want to prep first, but considering most of your deliveries end with receiving a divine blessing, a good place to start is at the workbench. Besides packaging sacred materials for delivery, workbenches can be used to equip any divine blessings you've gained. Divine blessings are passive boons you can equip to aid Mako. You can only equip up to 3 at a time, and these can help with offense, defense, and have other supplementary passive effects. Delivering a package to a god is a guaranteed way to receive one, but you can also gain 1 random divine blessing at Gago statues spread out in each realm, so visiting a workbench before you go on break or before packaging materials can have its advantages. Divine blessings can be used throughout a realm for multiple deliveries, but any blessings you acquired will automatically be discarded before you enter a new realm. Workbenches can also be used to synthesize elixirs. All elixirs require a certain amount of spirit water and red nectar to be crafted and may need other items depending on the type of elixir. It's important to know that sacred materials can't be carried over from one delivery to the next like divine blessings can, so using excess crystals to synthesize elixirs can be a good use for them, but that's not all excess crystals can be used for. The workbench also allows you to view the Mayoi coin exchange rate for sacred materials. While you can't exchange materials for coins at a workbench, you can decide whether you want to farm certain crystals before heading back to the office. If you want to exchange your excess materials for coins, you can do so at the automatic sacred material teller machine, or the ATM for short. Unlike workbenches, the ATM is only available at the office. The Mayoi coin exchange rate is displayed here as well, along with how many coins you can trade for. The exchange rate fluctuates throughout the game, so you may want to deposit certain materials to exchange for coins later, or to withdraw and use to synthesize elixirs. Like the ATM, Mayoi coins can only be used in the office with Yakui Maru, one of the 2 available merchants. You can use coins to buy a variety of items, including elixirs, secondary weapons, and more. Inventory can vary throughout the game, so it's always a good idea to check what's available during the break. Many of the items and secondary weapons available in the shop can be earned while exploring the realms you'll visit, and the same is true for Mayoi coins. If you're not sure what any of the items you acquired can be used for, you can check your inventory. Besides the description for anything you've gained, you can use the inventory menu to equip 1 item and 1 secondary weapon to use while out in the realm. Divine blessings you've acquired also have their own section, though they can't be equipped in the inventory menu. Equipped items and secondary weapons each have their own button for use, and you can see the equipped ones in the top left of the screen or at the top of the inventory screen, including the number you have available. If you want to change which item or weapon is equipped, you must do it through the inventory menu. Items can range from healing elixirs for health to time stopwatches to freeze mononoke in place for a limited time, while secondary weapons can consist of a strong ranged attack to a dive bomb with area of effect damage. Homuramuru is the other merchant and will only accept Torii coins, which are more rare than Mayoi coins but can be found while out in the realm. Homuramuru sells summoning stake cards. These function similarly to items in that they must be equipped, but instead of being used immediately, they summon a temporary specialty stake where most can be activated by pouncing. Some of these stakes you'll see in fixed locations throughout the game, but these cards let you set them in a place of your choosing. The office also does contain the red nectar well that you can use to restore your health and fill the nectar meter, and is open at all times, so if you did want to visit the office while in the middle of a delivery, you're free to do so. This isn't really necessary as most realms are designed with multiple deliveries in mind, so your progress is based on the gameplay loop of completing deliveries to open up new main paths with the seal stamps you acquire, but progressing through a realm tends to open up shortcuts for fast travel that can make certain trips more convenient. There is room to explore as most realms are fairly open and aren't always designed with routes that are obvious or linear, but there isn't a lot of reason to go out of your way from completing your delivery requests to move on and collect your new seal stamp. This also works for the general openness of a lot of realms, as there is a noticeable sense of progression from each delivery, especially after opening a spirit barrier with a newly collected seal stamp, and then getting to the final delivery phase of a realm to take on the boss. Jobs for boss battle start off just as natural as other jobs you receive, though they do tend to get a little more dramatic flair shortly into their intros. Bosses have their health bars at the bottom of the screen, and the fights themselves are fairly unique. They still follow the logic of delivering a package to a god and collecting their seal stamp from Mozu afterwards, but these do usually enter access to a realm so you can move on to continue your deliveries in the next. There's a lot of care I can tell was put into Outrider Mako. Visually, you can see that in how varied each realm in the Mayoi world looks, along with the various mononoke and the warm welcoming from the Bumon Delivery Kagura band after each completed job. The music also has a good amount of variety, not just between realms, but with various tracks that fit for a number of different situations, including the mellow Bumon Delivery Center music. But what felt really noticeable to me for the care that went into the game is the amount of detail that went into most of the items you can collect, or for the entries that go into Mako's notebook. Almost everything has some lore attached to it, and no matter what I received, I would take the time to read more than just what something does, even if that's the first thing that's explained. Divine blessings aren't just boons, there's a legend attached to each one, and many of the items aren't just helpful for surviving, they have history. Moses' delivery quest intros may be more stylized for bosses, but each delivery and the god associated with it usually has an explanation of that god's role in the world. And even if Mako's return to her world doesn't always feel like a priority as an overarching story, some realms do have more of a connection between the gods or the deliveries within them. Each realm has a distinct look and different layouts, with some that require large amounts of platforming, making plenty of use of kicking and pouncing on and past stakes and enemies. Many realms can require you to navigate through locked areas by finding keys hidden in various ways. Deliveries can also provide variation, as they don't always require you to mine for crystals. Some deliveries require other types of sacred materials that might need to be procured in other ways, or may need you to cross more dangerous paths. Some of these paths put you into enemy ambushes that are blocked by barriers. These forced battles can sometimes hold key items needed to progress, or sacred material needed for a package. Many of these fights may need you to make full use of Mako's abilities to get past them. There is a general flow on how the combat elements are supposed to come together in Outrider Mako. Group up nearby enemies, pounce on an enemy to cover them in red nectar, and then splash enemies within reach to maximize damage with pouncing, arrow, and other attacks. This flow can be interrupted depending on the enemy types you can encounter, as some mononoke can't be pounced on, can't be covered in nectar, or have limited vulnerability. These types of enemies by themselves do add a challenge, but when grouped in with others did feel more annoying, and I found myself better off managing them one by one, rather than trying to group enemies together to be more efficient. In these cases, your items and secondary weapons are incredibly useful and should be used, but I feel like the core combat mechanics are interesting enough to where it feels hampered by certain enemy combinations. I have a similar outlook on Outrider Mako's boss battles. While each boss fight is distinct with some having an environmental aspect to take into account, some also felt like they weren't designed to take some of Mako's abilities themselves into defeating the boss. I do appreciate how each one still does feel different, but it feels either like a missed opportunity or maybe something I wasn't understanding, where I couldn't implement some more techniques in the battle and had to settle on brute forcing most bosses with basic attacks and movement and secondary weapons. Still, it did feel satisfying to get past these obstacles and reporting back to Mozu for words of encouragement, a new seal stamp, and to see what the next delivery would be. The game can be challenging and a bit frustrating at times, but I did find it fair, even before the patch that made a number of adjustments due to its original difficulty, as you still have divine blessings and items to assist you. Outrider Mako's gameplay and lore presented make for a fairly unique top-down action-adventure game that I do think is worth visiting for fans of the genre looking for something different. Its combat and platforming mechanics are genuinely interesting, and even though I think there were some aspects that held it a little back here, I would like to see them further explored in the future. Mako's journey to return to her own world may not be elaborate on its own, but despite its seemingly simple packaging, I did appreciate the level of detail put into the other aspects of the game's lore and narrative presentation. It does lack in replay value, but it is a decently length adventure where each completed delivery does feel gratifying and gave me a feeling of accomplishment at the end of its credits I don't always feel after each game I play. If you think that's worth checking out, please visit the Steam store page. But that's it for me. Let me know what you think below. Thanks. Bye.